Alright. So here is the new CNC Uploader that does both machines. It does the round machine and the profile square machine. Okay, so we go here. First thing you do is you hit initialize, and it homes the machine, raises it. Now I'm doing the testing on one of my standard CNC routers, and the difference between this and your machine is this machine homes off to the side, okay, to the minus on the y-axis. So to compensate for that, I changed the settings just in the setup here, configuration, and under the limit switches, you have, you can either home the machine at the front. It says home X, Y, X negative, Y negative, negative's this way, or positive, or Y positive, which is that way. So the second machine I sent you has home switches front and back. So what these numbers are, is these are the numbers it puts into the coordinates after it does the homing, so that it knows where the 0, 0 is. So if it homes at the front, it puts a negative coordinate of negative 3.9, which we've already measured. Put that in after it brings it to the front and homes it. It puts negative 3.9. So if it moves that way, it goes to the center, which is 0. If it homes at the back, it tells the machine it's already positive 3.5. So when you tell it to go to 0, it comes back towards the middle. So anyway, to do the testing on this machine, I'm going to just home it at the front. So it's homing over in this corner, which is 4 inches from the center. So I just put negative 4 in this here, and on your machine this would be around 0. So when it homes, it puts the negative 4. These two numbers get put in here because it's set up to home at the front right now. Okay, so you can program the machine to home either the front or the back, and after it's done homing, it knows where the 0 is, because these offsets tell it this is the distance you are from the real 0, either positive or negative. So now, so we initialize the machine. Now, if you go into the generate menu, let's zoom in here. Okay, if we go to the generate menu, there's a new sub-menu here called profile cut. Now you still have your circle cut, but here's the profile cut one. Let's move that over. So, actually what I'll do is, okay, now I already opened this file. Okay, I'm not going to do it again. A sec. Okay, so I'm going to bring it up. I just wanted to clear that, so clear that image. So go to generate, go to profile cut. Okay, so there's nothing here yet. Now, with this machine, the cut toolpath is created in another program. And that, so you draw, like on these profiles, I drew them in Rhino 3D, which is a CAD program. Then I brought them into my StarCam and laid them out, added an entry point, made sure it was a closed contour, checked the direction, add a few things. So we're going to open a pre-existing one. So first of all, you have to open a profile. So we're going to open StarCam toolpath file. And these are all .lks files. So here is one here of one of your smaller bottles. Okay, so there it is there. There's the path it's going to cut. So this, the size of it is 1.844 wide. You can measure your bottle hole with a micrometer or a vernier, and make sure you got the right one for the right bottle. But now this toolpath is drawn for a certain diameter cutter. So if it's a 3/16 cutter, it's a different toolpath than the one for a quarter cutter. So they would cut different sizes. And you also, the thing about this machine is the cutter cuts so close to the edge of the jig that it can destroy the jig if you hit the edge of the hole in the jig, because the hole in the jig is almost exactly the size of the hole in the plastic bottle. Unfortunately, on those plastic bottles, there's nothing around the edge. You're cutting right to the very edge, which makes it really hard. So the size of the shape is very critical, and it depends if you're using a 3/16 cutter or a 1/4 inch cutter. So we have to tweak those, and we'll have to resize these if necessary. Okay, so the parameters you're going to work with here, you've got all these parameters here for the two types of bottles. Well, basically, the two bigger bottles, they don't cut at 0, 0 in the middle of the machine. They cut back 2 inches because they were so big that if they hung off the front of the machine, they were hanging out too far on the machine. So what I did was I moved the cut hole on those back 2 inches away from the other. Alright, so there's a check mark here. Why this check mark, you check depending on whether the hole is in the 0 in the center of the machine, 0, 0, or if it's back 0, 2. Okay, so this check mark, Y offset the drawing hole center plus 2 inches. Okay, so you would check this if the hole was back 2 inches. Okay, now this one here, the Z-axis start level is just above the, you set that to be just above the top of your plastic before you plunge. So the machine goes down to this level here. And on this machine is a high Z-axis or Z-axis. So I have a big number in here, minus 3.2, because this machine here is a router and it has a long stroke. So anyway, just for this machine I've set it to minus 3.2. The second parameter is the Z cut depth, and that is how far it goes through the bottle. So I have it, I'm going to change that to 0.25. 0.25. No, on this machine I'll change that one to 0.1. All right, 0.25. Okay, so it's going to go down to the work here, and then it's going to go down a further 0.25 to plunge into the plastic, and then it'll go round. This checkbox here is dry run, and what that does is, for testing, you don't want to destroy your jig, because if you do, you're in big trouble. You've done an awful lot of damage. So if the hole where the jig is, if you accidentally cut that too big or let the machine cut in the wrong spot, you're going to ruin the jig, and then you're going to have to build another one, which is not fun. So the dry run doesn't drop the cutter, it only drops the cutter down about an inch above the part or so, and it allows you to do your test before you try cutting anything. Very, very important. So, and then down here you have fine adjustment cut, and this lets you, okay, all the patterns are drawn, come in centered on 0, 0 in the coordinate system. Okay, now if it's cutting a little bit to the left or the right or front or the back, a tiny bit, you can tweak it by putting numbers in this fine adjustment cut position. Plus, you could go plus 20 thou, minus 20 thou, plus 10 thou, minus 10 thou, something like that to adjust it, you know. And so first of all, you want to bring the cutter down very close to the top of the jig, and you want to watch where it's cutting. Do a number of tests. Watch where it's cutting before you drop it through the hole and cut the part. Okay, you need to do all this setup. So and down here you've got the one that's enable light curtain, and the machine doesn't have a light curtain right now, so you probably won't check that unless you put one on. Now, checkbox is home XY at the end of every cycle. It comes back and it homes the XYZ. Okay, and now that takes extra time, but I recommend you do that because you don't want to start machine drifting or you know, jamming up or screwing up bottles. So the best thing is leave that enabled. But for some tests here, I'm going to disable it. This one here is is basically park the Y position either at the front end or at the back end. Okay, so I'm going to change the word. It says home right now, but I'm going to change the word to park Y position at back. Okay, so if this is not checked, it parks it at the front at the end of the cut before it homes it, and if it's at the other, it parks it behind it. Now, the reason you'd park it at the back is if you're cutting the hole that's closer to the back machine, it's faster. Cycle time will be less if you park the machine just on the other side of that instead of coming all the way to the front and parking it. So, depending on where you're cutting, you'll check this box here to either park it. Now, if you're cutting the 2 jigs with the hole near the back, you'll want to park the machine just beyond that, at the back. Okay. Now, the first machine I sent you only has limit switches at the front, so it can't use either of these. It can't home the machine at the back, and it can't park the machine at the back. Okay. So, we're going to generate Okay, so first of all, we're going to do, we have the router here. We're going to do a dry run, okay? And we're going to take off the homing, and we're going to, we're going to have it cut at the center of the machine, not back 2 inches. So we'll do generate, which sends the file, which uploads the file to the controller, into the memory of the controller. Now hit the reset button to, okay? And then, now it only dropped the cutter down a little bit, not right down to the wood there. I've already cut a few shapes on this, so the cut has already been done. Okay, so you park the machine at the front. Now if I click park the machine at the back, and I generate, and I upload, it'll leave the machine back behind the part. Right? And so I'm going to take off the depth of cut, and since I've already done a test here, and we're going to have to do generate again, because you always have to send it to the controller. All right. It's going to go right down. Now if I was to park the machine at the front and home the machine, there's and then I'll do a generate. So it's going to home the machine after it's done. But on this machine, it homes right over in the corner. Okay, now we hit cycle start again. Away she goes. Alright, so I'm going to turn off the home end position here because I don't want to waste the time to home it. So we're going to, if I click this button, the Y offset, the drawing center, plus 2 inches, it's going to, it was cutting the part here, it's going to cut the part here. Okay, now this is 0, 0. So it is actually going to cut the part centered on 0 in the X and plus 2 in the Y. And that's for those other 2 jigs where the hole is closer to the back. So I'm going to do generate. I'm also gonna, okay, I'll do generate, and then now it's setting it back here. Okay. But it's parking it at the front. So if I want to park it at the back, I'll click park at Y position at back, generate. So you got all these different combinations of what you can do, but you got to make sure it's right so you don't mess up the jig. Now if I want to do the same thing but I want to do a dry run, you know, generate, click on, now just doing a dry run above the part so you don't destroy the jig. Alright, so that's the that should get you started. Now I'm going to be, I'm giving you the test file here, and you can do some tests on this size file. I think, I forget, I'll tell you which one it was. And I have to sit down and have to create all these for you, the final thing. I had to actually change my do a lot of R&D, do a lot of work to get it to, I have to add an entry point because you don't want it plunging right where it's going to start cutting, or it'll leave like a dimple there in your part. It has to plunge away from it, move in, cut around it, and then come back and then raise out of it. So anyway,